BattleBit's success speaks volumes, and what it speaks is just how much demand there is, even for a Battlefield-esque game. Now, obviously, BattleBit, gameplay-wise, is much different than Battlefield, but again, it just speaks to the amount of demand there is for a Battlefield type of game to release and to actually be half decent. If I were EA and DICE, I would be paying particularly close attention to this particular situation because there's one very important thing that they have to get correct. The next Battlefield. And in my opinion, the next Battlefield game will be better than Battlefield 2042. And I'm confident in that enough to say that right now, even before we're even starting to talk about the next Battlefield game. Because if you take a step back and look at everything as a whole, it is nearly impossible for the next Battlefield game to be worse than Battlefield 2042, because they would essentially have to make the same mistakes and then some, and I do not believe this time around they will be doing that in the next Battlefield game, because Battlefield 2042's mistakes, some of them are just incredibly unique. And I know that DICE has a famous track record of not learning from their mistakes, but there comes a point where it's like, are they really not going to learn anything from Battlefield 2042? And I suppose that remains to be seen, but if they don't learn anything from Battlefield 2042's failure, I think that would be even more impressive than if they managed to learn something from it, if you know what I mean. So with all that being said, we're going to dive into what I would love to see the next Battlefield actually focus on, and without further ado, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, and of course, subscribe to the channel, and let's just get right into things. So first thing I want to bring up just right off the bat here, they need to do away with 128 players just completely. Just don't even put it in the next Battlefield game at all. And I know some people are going to be like, oh my god, like why? You know, why no 128 players? Well, 128 players essentially caused a ton of Battlefield 2042's problems. 128 players caused the terrible map design we see in Battlefield 2042. DICE was clearly and just totally inexperienced with designing maps for 128 players, and believe me, it shows even to this day. So I would much rather them be more familiar with what they're actually doing and make 64-player maps, which is what Battlefield has always been anyway. On top of that, 128 players caused the server tick rate to be reduced from 60, which we had in Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5, to 45. And if you don't really know what that does, that basically affects the entire game. It affects hit reg, so you're going to have worse hit reg. More of your shots are not going to register. The game is going to feel slightly less responsive because obviously the server is updating at a slower rate per second. And it essentially just causes a whole slew of issues that you wouldn't have had if you didn't have 128 players in a server. On top of that, obviously the netcode suffered from 128 players. That could be partially blamed on crossplay, but I think the next Battlefield is going to be crossplay anyway, so I think we're just going to have to live with that. The performance also suffers from 128 players. I think in general, Battlefield is a game that just requires too hefty of a PC anyway, and 128 players compounds that issue. And in a really funny way, the 128 players actually indirectly caused some of the gunplay problems, and I'll explain why. So, like I mentioned previously, 128 players caused them to make shitty big maps, and the shitty big maps basically caused the gunplay to be this like super laser beamy, extremely long range sort of thing. So, do you see where I'm going with that? It caused a ton of problems. Get rid of 128 players. Another thing I would love to see Battlefield do is to just completely get rid of specialists. Scrap that entire idea. I heard a while ago that they were trying to base a whole universe off of Battlefield 2042 and the specialist system. Hopefully they have come to their senses and completely scrapped that idea. No one cares about specialists. Don't ever complicate things. Battlefield is not a hero shooter, and none of the real Battlefield core community actually gives a shit about specialists. Battlefield is one of those games where people kind of like playing the faceless soldier, so I would just let that happen and don't mess with it. On top of that, speaking of things of not messing with, don't make another BR in the next Battlefield, please. You tried it with Firestorm. That was a complete fucking disaster, okay? You tried it again with 2042 with Hazard Zone, and amazingly, Hazard Zone was actually more of a failure than Firestorm, which, honestly, round of applause for that, DICE. I do not understand how that is even possible. And I totally get that EA wants a piece of the Battle Royale pie. They see the dollar signs and they want to capitalize on that. But the fact of the matter is, your franchise is in no position to take really any massive risks anymore. So I think the best course of action is to just deliver a pretty vanilla Battlefield experience that has basic features such as a scoreboard and a squad management system and a server browser on launch, and just ride the roller coaster. And that segues me into my next point. They need to actually make sure this next Battlefield game is ready to release properly, because if there's one thing the franchise cannot sustain for any longer, it's a bad launch. First impressions are absolutely essential for the next Battlefield game. You cannot afford to release a bad product that everyone plays and it gets a terrible reputation from the start, then nobody buys your game or ever comes back to it. That is exactly what happened with Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042. You absolutely must have a good first impression in the beta and in the launch of the game, or you can realistically kiss your franchise goodbye. For as long as I've been a player of Battlefield, and for as long as I've been a content creator in the Battlefield community, I have never once seen a Battlefield game sustain decent interest for a long period of time. And ultimately, that is really what's important for the longevity of your game. You need to keep people interested, you need to have something going on in your game, and you just need to make sure that you're ready to release it. And of course, after you release the game, you need to make sure you support the game in a way that is interesting and acceptable to your community the way you used to do it before, even if some of the paid DLCs were delayed. You still got the paid DLC because, well, you paid for the DLC. Now, live service, I don't think is going anywhere. I think the entire FPS industry is moving towards live service for a reason. I think we will never see Battlefield Premium ever again for as long as any of us live, because they like keeping that door open to pretty much say, hey guys, it's been a great ride, but here's the thing, we're not making any money because our game sucks, so we're going to cancel support for it. They like having that option open with live service. Now, what would actually make an acceptable live service? Well, I think Battlefield 2042, with its Season Pass, that's pretty cool. You could argue, okay, we could make improvements to the Season Pass here or there, and I would definitely agree, but the content, the maps, the new weapons, the vault weapons, the whatever you want to say, that needs to be upped by at least double, if not triple. People are used to Battlefield DLCs containing 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 maps, like in Battlefield 1. In Battlefield 2042, 1 map is absolutely not enough. It's just not enough. Even when you rework some of the base game maps, it's still not enough. So you need to make sure that you support your game properly by including, at bare minimum, 2 to 3 new maps for each season or update, whatever you want to call it. And on top of that, the new maps are flanked with a multitude of new weapons, new battle pass, new backgrounds, new challenges, just basically a lot of things, okay? My general point is have more content than Battlefield 2042. It's not much to ask, and more rides on this Battlefield than ever, so it's a good time to really sit down and execute. So after all of this stuff has been discussed, what should the setting of the next Battlefield title be? And this might come as a surprise to some people, maybe it won't. I think they should be boring as shit with the next setting. I really do. They should play it extremely safe. And a wonderful way to do that would be Battlefield Bad Company 3. Or, even better arguably, Battlefield 4 2, but obviously name it something different than that, but basically, a sequel to Battlefield 4. The reason I think these are no-brainer ideas is because we know the next Battlefield game is most likely going to have a single-player mode. You could easily sort of segue the campaign of the next Battlefield off of Battlefield 4's campaign or Battlefield Bad Company 2's campaign. And on top of that, it's something people have asked for a very long time. It would generate a lot of new interest, all this sort of shit. Play it safe, though, okay? Play it safe. I don't want to make this video too long. I could easily make like a 2-hour video, my perfect Battlefield, but, I don't really think anyone would want to watch that. So if you made it to this point, hit the like button and, of course, subscribe to the channel. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, particularly for this video. If you don't normally comment, I would definitely like to hear about just what people are thinking, what your thoughts are on the next Battlefield and the setting and the mechanics they should get rid of and basically what they should do. So if you have any thoughts on that, definitely use the comment section. Join the Discord, follow me on Twitter, links are in the description, and I'm going to see you guys later.